Imagine being so lost in darkness, you feel like you're falling into the well with no stairway.
Yeah.
You've tried everything, every path feels blocked, and the only option left feels like something out of a disturbing movie scene you hoped was just fiction.
It's a desperate place to be.
Yet, faced with this profound suffering, people reach this point, and they make a choice that often surprises those looking in.
Absolutely.
So this deep dive is into electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. A treatment with a, let's face it, deeply controversial past.
Definitely.
Yet one that's experiencing a quiet comeback today. We're using sources shared by you, our listener, which give us this remarkable blend of really personal experience and broader research context.
And that personal angle is so powerful, isn't it?
It really is. Our mission here is to cut through the stereotypes, understand what ECT is actually like in modern practice, who's using it, why it's used, and what the reality is, particularly concerning its most feared side effect.
Yeah, memory loss looms large there. But the source material you've given us is powerful because it starts right at that moment of crisis.
Yeah.
It shows just how desperate someone can be for relief.
Absolutely. We're introduced to Kitty Dukakis at a truly low point. It's her 38th wedding anniversary. Not a happy milestone, but the end of 4 months locked in what she calls a crisis period of depression.
And the description of her state is just, heartbreaking. This is someone known for enormous enthusiasm, deeply involved with her family, her work.
Demanding work, helping refugees.
Right, her friends, hobbies, and all of it was just gone.
Yeah.
The source says she couldn't even imagine enjoyment.
Wow.
Wasn't really talking to her kids or her sister, just dragging herself through the day, missing work, sleeping way too much, avoiding anything social.
It paints such a picture of profound emptiness. And alongside that, her turning to alcohol, starting with wine but escalating to vodka, described as an amnesiac.
Just trying to numb it.
Exactly. Using it just to escape the horrendous feelings she had about herself. Feeling vulnerable. Her kids worried she might actually harm herself.
And that really underscores the severity, doesn't it? She felt like she'd run out of options. The alcohol wasn't solving anything.
It's just kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, just numbing the pain temporarily. It got to the point where, as the source describes, she told her doctor he had to check me in.
And that desperation led to a decision most people would probably shy away from. She was going to try the only thing left, electroconvulsive therapy.
And for so many people, hearing electroconvulsive therapy immediately brings up that image. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
The public perception is so heavily skewed by movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Jack Nicholson enduring what looks like this brutal, punitive procedure.
Totally. And the source material reveals that for Kitty and Michael Dukakis, this wasn't just some movie image. It was tied to their own family history, which, understandably fueled anxiety.
Right. Michael's older brother, Celian, had ECT way back in 1951.
That far back.
Yeah. And the source details Celian's story. He was a promising young man, good student, athlete, no prior history of mental illness. But he suffered a severe breakdown after a breakup.
Yeah.
Attempted suicide with sleeping pills.
Oh, man.
He was treated at a place called Baldpate, and the treatment then involved ECT combined with insulin coma treatments.
Which was common then, but pretty risky stuff.
Very risky. And Michael's memory of the outcome for Celian is just stark. He was never really the same person.
Never the same.
Gained weight, had not much effect, meaning his outward emotional expression was muted, flattened.
Kind of a zombie-like quality you described.
Exactly. Lack of communication, that zombie-like look. And Michael vividly remembered Celian saying he never wanted to go through shock treatment again. That experience, understandably, wounded Michael so deeply.
You can absolutely see why. That's one powerful negative family experience right there.
But the sources also include another family story, described as having a bit more upbeat outcome. Kitty's brother-in-law and friend, Al Peters, had ECT over 40 years earlier.
Okay.
He was dealing with drinking problems and paranoid feelings at a time before modern antipsychotic drugs were really available.
So, different context. What happened with him?
Al had 6 or 8 sessions, and he recalled it erased everything fermenting in his mind. He lost memory for about 3 to 4 months prior.
Significant memory loss then.
Yes, but he felt it cleared his psychosis, and importantly, he felt he survived it.
Okay, so survived it is maybe the key phrase there. A very different feeling.
Exactly. So you have these 2 contrasting family histories, one leaving deep trauma, the other seen as having helped despite the memory loss. This mixed history plus that negative public image, it created this huge shadow over ECT. made it a truly feared option for many.
Which makes the descriptions of modern ECT practice in the sources so incredibly interesting, because it sounds nothing like those historical images or, movie portrayals.
Right.
Let's jump into what it's like today, based on the sources. Say, at a place like Massachusetts General Hospital, where Kitty was treated.
Okay, so the source describes the treatment room itself. It might feel a bit cold, maybe like a small wardroom with stainless steel, fluorescent lights, that antiseptic smell.
Kind of clinical.
Yeah, and often these units are in secluded areas, sometimes even basements. The source notes this might feed into the stigma, but it also offers privacy. The key is you don't see those movie images of struggling patients or burly attendants.
Okay. And the preparation, what's involved there?
It's described in detail. Patients have specific requirements. Fasting beforehand, no hairpins, jewelry, things like that, no nail polish on the fingers or toes they use for monitoring.
Like the oxygen monitor.
Exactly. They wait in an area, and one patient, Sister Barbara, recalls seeing others looking so sick, maybe walking stiffly, seeming disoriented.
Then you're wheeled into the treatment room itself.
And this is where the modern medical approach is just completely different. There's a full medical team, a nurse, an anesthesiologist, and the ECT doctor.
Professionals monitoring everything.
Absolutely. They attach monitoring devices, a clip on your finger for oxygen, leads on your chest and limbs for heart and muscle activity, a blood pressure cuff. An IV line is inserted.
And this is crucial, anesthesia is given. Something like sodium pentothal.
Yep, mentioned in the source, the patient is asleep within seconds. Then a muscle relaxant is administered, causing near-complete paralysis.
And that's why you don't see the violent convulsions from old movies.
Precisely. The body is medically prevented from thrashing. The main visible sign of the seizure might just be a slight twitch of the toe, as the source notes.
Okay, that's a world away from the stereotype. What else?
Because the anesthesia impacts breathing, the patient is given oxygen. A bite block or cushion is put in to protect the tongue and teeth. Then the electrodes.
The things that deliver the current.
Right. Described as about $half size. They're placed on the head after the scalp is cleaned and conductive gel applied.
And the machine itself, is it some intimidating device?
Surprisingly unassuming, apparently. Described like an old-fashioned stereo system. But it transforms the electrical current into a specific therapeutic waveform.
And the dose is tailored.
Very carefully calculated based on individual factors, age, sex, medications, even skull thickness. And the energy level is actually quite low. Less than 1 amp.
Less than 1 amp, so like a fraction of what a vacuum cleaner uses.
Or a heart defibrillator, yeah. Just a fraction. The medical goal is to induce a grand mal seizure in the brain.
Visualized in the source like Manhattan lights flickering?
Exactly like that. But thanks to the medications, the body remains nearly motionless during this controlled event.
And the whole thing is incredibly fast.
Super fast. The electrical stimulus is delivered for a maximum of 8 seconds, often just half a second.
Half a second.
Often, yeah. The controlled seizure lasts typically between 15 and 60 seconds. The entire procedure, from being wheeled in to recovery, can be less than 15 minutes, sometimes even just 5.
Wow. That's quick. And a typical course?
Usually 6 to 12 sessions, given 2 or 3 times a week over, say, 2 to 3 weeks. Some patients might then have maintenance treatments later, if needed, to prevent relapse.
Okay. And what do patients say it actually feels like? The source mentions Laurel Zangrel.
Yeah, she described it as causing maybe a headache or grogginess afterwards, but not horrible or shocked. She even made comparisons like it being better than a tooth pulled or definitely is better than root canal.
Putting it in a very relatable context.
Exactly. Another patient, Rhoda Falk, found it successful, but did recall it being more invasive in the past. So the modern version seems less daunting physically.
Okay, so that's the procedure today. Much different. What about the people receiving it? The research cited gives us a profile of the typical modern ECT patient.
Right. One striking point is they are more likely to be women, about 2/3.
Why is that?
The source links this partly to higher rates of depression in women, but also suggests maybe something about how doctors and patients perceive and discuss treatment options. Bias could play a role.
Interesting. And age.
They're also more likely to be older. Over 1/3 of hospitalized ECT patients are over 65.
Okay, why older?
Well, it connects to higher rates of depression and suicide risk in the elderly. The complexities of medication interactions in older folks.
Yeah, polypharmacy is a real issue.
Definitely. And critically, Medicare coverage makes it financially accessible for that age group. The source even cites the NIH concluding ECT is generally underused or unavailable for the elderly, despite working so well for them.
Underused for the group, it helps significantly who can access it financially. That's counterintuitive.
It is. And this is where it gets particularly interesting when contrasting with the past. The sources say today's patient is more likely to be white, rich, and from the Northeast or Midwest.
Rich. Really? I thought the stereotype was the opposite.
Exactly. That's the key insight here. It's linked to money and insurance, facilitating access to private hospitals, and seeking treatment perhaps in areas with fewer legal restrictions or less stigma attached locally.
So, while ECT used to be associated with state hospitals and, the poor wards today, despite that lingering image, the data shows it's disproportionately accessed by those with more resources.
It completely flips the script on the historical stereotype, but it highlights what the source calls an equally troubling concern today. The poor are often denied ECT.
Denied? Why?
The source says it's often because public hospitals are wary of the stigma surrounding ECT and also the cost associated with setting up and running a service.
So stigma and cost prevent access for the poor.
Yeah. The source gives a powerful example. NYU Tisch, an upscale private hospital, offers ECT, but the city-owned Bellevue Hospital, serving a much poorer population nearby, does not.
That's a stark contrast.
And Dr. Jonathan Brody is quoted saying this denial is grounded only in ignorance and history, and means poor people are denied wonderful care.
Wow, that's a strong statement. It really points to a significant disparity, but what unites all these patients regardless of background?
The source describes it simply as an unrelenting, unbearable sickness.
And it includes specific patient examples that really bring this suffering and the relief ECT can bring to life. Mark Pierre.
Yeah, he describes depression as fire raging inside your skull, feeling he couldn't recognize himself, like he was heading into the well with no stairway.
That image again, chilling.
He called ECT his safety net that pulled me from an abyss. A powerful image of survival.
And Geraldine next.
She talks about a complete nervous breakdown, screaming, cutting herself, drinking heavily. She says ECT literally saved my life many times, helping her through that initial crisis, and again years later after mourning her twin sister.
It sounds like a last resort that truly worked for her.
And there's Katie Steinhoff, who was just 17, suffering from severe mania for 2 years, barely functioning. Her mother felt she would have tried voodoo dolls out of desperation.
Just 17, that's tough.
Katie felt medications made her different. But ECT helped her immediately, reduced her paranoia, made her feel fixed.
These stories really highlight that for people at the very edge, when standard treatments haven't worked or maybe aren't tolerated, ECT is often seen as the last best hope.
Exactly. The sources clarify that severe depression is the primary condition treated today over 80%, much less often schizophrenia, now that we have better antipsychotics, and a lower percentage for mania or bipolar due to other effective options.
That's also mentioned for pregnant women.
Yeah, where medication risks to the fetus are a major concern. And though seldom used, it's been found effective and safe for adolescents and children in specific severe cases.
Okay, so it seems like for a while ECT was heading for the dustbin of medical history, right? Like lobotomy.
It really did seem that way. Influenced heavily by those negative movie portrayals and some very fierce critics pushing to ban it.
You see that trend in the data, too. Dr. Robert L. Palmer even predicted in 1981 that ECT would be gone within 40 years.
And NIMH data showed a huge drop, 46% nationwide between 75 and 80. Even bigger at state hospitals, 74%.
So what turned it around? Why the quiet comeback?
Well, a few key things. One huge reason was the realization that traditional antidepressant drugs, even the newer SSRIs, simply failed for a significant chunk of patients.
They weren't the magic bullet for everyone.
Not at all. About 1 in 5 didn't respond well, or they couldn't tolerate the side effects, things like lost sex drive, weight gain. Patients and doctors just needed alternatives.
And research played a role, too.
A big role. High-powered studies in the late 70s and 80s from places like Britain and the NIH actually validated ECT's effectiveness and safety compared to medications, which really challenged the critics.
So the science started catching up, or rather confirming its use.
Exactly. And new research reinforced just how quickly and powerfully it worked for the most severely ill patients.
So you see the evidence for this rebound in the data from the 80s.
Yeah, usage kind of leveled off, then started rising slightly. The number of scientific articles on ECT nearly doubled in the mid-80s. Medicare usage went up 30% between 87 and 92.
And Julaine Siegel's story fits right into this era.
Perfectly. She says she was not responding to medications. In fact, I was dying, facing nonstop of anxiety. ECT relieved her symptoms in about 2 weeks. She's quoted saying she would not be alive today if I didn't have ECT.
Another life saved, in her view.
And that rebound trend continued into the 2000s.
Yeah.
You can see it in data from states like California, Texas, Vermont, states that actually require reporting. Their usage might be lower overall than some other places, but it was increasing.
Okay, and there was a shift in where ECT happens, too.
A huge shift.
Yeah.
Dramatically towards outpatient settings. The source says maybe a third of patients are now in and out of the hospital in under 2 hours.
Wow, in and out. Why the change?
Partly driven by managed care, trying to cut costs, wanting shorter hospital stays, but also by patient preference. People don't want to stay in a hospital, especially not in a locked psych ward, if they don't have to.
Makes sense.
And doctors are more willing to do it outpatient if the patient seems stable and has good support at home.
And the source notes simply, with that greater ease comes greater use.
Pretty much sums it up. Precise numbers are hard to get, but estimates suggest maybe 100,000 Americans receive ECT each year now, and that number seems to be growing, though it's probably not back to the peak levels of the 50s or 60s.
Which might have been as high as 300,000.
Could have been, yeah. So it's made a comeback, but that doesn't mean access and quality are, uniform across the U.S.
Far from it, seems like. The sources highlight significant unevenness. It's just unavailable in many cities.
Right. And huge variation in how much it's used from one community to the next. We mentioned those demographic disparities. Grandparents, nearly 7 times more likely than kids.
And the patient most likely to be denied is poor, Black, and under 18.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which raises that crucial question the source poses. If maybe 4 million Americans have severe depression that doesn't respond to drugs, is ECT actually underused if only around 100,000 are getting it each year?
That's a big gap, a really big gap. And beyond just access, there's this major issue with the quality of care, right?
Yes. Research cited from Columbia University found that ECT works less well in community hospitals compared to academic centers.
Why? What were they doing differently or wrong?
They pinpointed several deviations from recommended practices. Things like doctors stopping treatment too early before the full benefit was reached.
Okay.
Inadequate follow-up care, inconsistency in monitoring for side effects like memory loss, and unreliable use of monitoring equipment like EEGs to track the seizure.
So not following the best practices consistently.
Right. And these deviations, according to the Columbia researchers, raise public health concerns. Dr. Richard Herman is quoted calling the variation in ECT practice off-the-charts variation compared to other medical procedures.
Off the charts. That's worrying. What's behind that? Training issues?
Seems closely linked. The source notes that too few young psychiatrists are actually trained in ECT or even believe in its effectiveness. It ranks low among critical skills in training program surveys.
So new doctors aren't learning it properly.
Many residents have limited exposure and, critically, aren't required to be competent to administer it. And older psychiatrists, while they might not be updated on the latest techniques, because national recertification requiring updated ECT competence isn't mandatory.
So you would have doctors using outdated methods?
Potentially, yes. Dr. Elizabeth Childs shared her experience of having to shut down a hospital's program just to retrain and retool the staff, update the equipment, set stricter criteria.
If one hospital needed that, others probably do too.
Exactly. It points to a systemic issue in maintaining quality standards.
And what about internationally? Is it the same picture everywhere?
Not at all. The source broadens the view. Some countries have banned or significantly limited ECT, Slovenia, Italy, Germany, often due to political reasons or, historical baggage.
Right.
But then on the flip side, it remains quite popular and widely available in places like Scandinavia.
So big differences in Europe alone. What about elsewhere?
This is where the source paints the most alarming picture. Many countries in the Third World and elsewhere, Nigeria, Russia, Thailand, Japan, India, China, Turkey.
Okay.
While the appeal there is often its low cost and high success rate for severe illness, which is understandable, it is tragically often administered without anesthesia or muscle relaxants.
Without anesthesia? You mean like the old days, like the movies?
Exactly. Unmodified ECT. The sources include specific disturbing details. A survey in India showing over half of patients in teaching hospitals get it without anesthesia. Thailand with a staggering 94% rate of no anesthesia.
94%? That's horrific.
It is. China allegedly applying electrodes to acupuncture points instead of standard placements.
Yeah.
And accounts from Turkey claiming it's used on children as young as 9, sometimes allegedly as punishment.
As punishment? Oh my God. That highlights a truly stark global divide in how this is done.
Absolutely. And that Lancet editorial mentioned in the source, though written a while ago, makes a powerful point. If ECT faces restrictions or falls out of favor, it's often not because the treatment itself doesn't work, but because psychiatrists failed to supervise and monitor its use properly.
A failure of oversight, not the treatment per se.
That was their argument, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room for many people when they hear about ECT memory loss. The sources, particularly through Kitty Dukakis' story, really dive deep into this. It's often cited as the most feared side effect.
It absolutely is. And her personal account makes it very real, very tangible.
Right.
She talks about a magnificently romantic trip to Paris with Michael just before her first ECT course.
Okay.
Michael remembers it vividly. She remembers nothing. Just gone. She assumes that memory is simply gone forever, which convinced her that patients really need to be prepared for the possibility of some permanent loss.
Nothing at all. That's profound. And it affects daily life, too.
Hugely. She gives specific examples of daily frustration. Forgetting phone numbers, even her son's. Missing appointment times and locations, even therapy sessions, forgetting how to drive familiar routes she'd navigated hundreds of times, needing Michael to direct her.
That must be incredibly disorienting. And embarrassing, maybe.
She talks about that, too. Especially forgetting names in the political world, where recognizing people and remembering commitments is just crucial. She feels it comes across as disrespectful or makes her seem insincere when she forgets promises she made to help people.
Yeah, I can see that. Does anything bring the memories back?
Sometimes. She notes that some memories do return with cues, like seeing people again or rewatching a movie. But there's this distinction she makes between memories she wants to lose, the ones about her severe depression.
Which makes sense.
And those she loses but didn't want to, often involving things from the 2 weeks immediately before and the 2 weeks after treatment. Sometimes, she says, memories are just wiped out.
Wiped out. And what does her doctor say about this, Dr. Welch?
He's described in the source as being very honest about it. He confirms that memory loss is clearly an ECT side effect. He notes these effects are usually worst right after a course of treatment and tend to improve over time.
Okay, so it gets better.
Generally, yes. Unlike the memory issues that might worsen with untreated depression itself, he also believes the brain becomes more durable over time, maybe accommodates, leading to less severe memory loss with subsequent treatments years later.
That's interesting. So maybe the brain adapts somehow.
That seems to be his view. And it's important to note the consent process mentioned. Her form, like others, warned of memory disturbance and the potential for it to persist for months or years, noting perhaps 1 in 100 report lasting problems.
1 in 100 still feels significant if it's you.
Absolutely. And the courses also explore other factors that could contribute to Kitty's memory issues specifically. She had a history of alcoholism, past amphetamine use, and was on antidepressants.
Some of which can cause memory problems on their own.
Exactly. Doctors had even warned her of diffuse neurological impairments long before she ever had ECT. Plus, her age 69 at the time is also a factor. Her sister and friends experienced similar forgetfulness, just with aging.
So it's complex. It might not all be the ECT.
It's likely multifactorial for her.
Yeah.
Her children's perspectives are included too, offering another angle. Her daughter Cara feels at least some of it is due to ECT.
Okay.
Her son John agrees some is probably age or just being scatterbrained, but emphasizes that some loss is very specifically related to ECT. He describes it as a complete blank on mundane recent things, not just being fuzzy.
But how do they weigh that against the benefits?
Critically, they see these memory issues as minor annoyances, compared to the profound change in her being a much happier, healthier person.
The trade-off seems worth it from their perspective.
For her, yes. And Kitty has coping strategies, practical things. Asking family and friends for reminders constantly, keeping a detailed notebook, relying heavily on her appointment calendar, carefully planning driving routes.
Things you do to manage any kind of memory challenge.
Right. She also finds that knowing what to expect, the headaches, the sleepiness after treatment, helps make the whole process more predictable, less frightening.
And the source highlights how variable this all is.
Hugely variable, unpredictable, even for the same person from one section to the next or one series of treatments to the next. They even tried adjusting the stimulus using an ultra-brief wave pulse to reduce memory loss.
Did that work?
It did reduce memory loss, but it turned out to be less effective for the depression itself. So they were looking into adjusting the stimulus duration instead. It's an ongoing effort to minimize that side effect.
Okay, so even with its effectiveness, there's still this significant hurdle for patients.
Stigma.
Massive hurdle. The source talks about the shame often associated with mental illness, how it's seen so differently than, say, heart disease or diabetes.
And for ECT patients, it's a double stigma. Exactly. You're not only dealing with mental illness, but you've had ECT, which carries all its own historical baggage and misunderstanding. Patients like Joyce Jackson and Rosemary Goodwin kept their treatment secret for years.
Were there consequences for people who did disclose?
Sometimes, yes. Rita Rose lost a job after disclosing it. Rosemary Goodwin is quoted saying she just didn't want to be seen as a crazy lady.
That's incredibly sad and unfair.
But the sources also describe this growing movement of patients speaking out, calling themselves a silent majority, drawing parallels to other civil rights groups who push for recognition.
So, people fighting back against the shame.
Yeah. Joyce Jackson wrote an article. Goodwin and Rose agreed to be named in a book, which is a big step.
And Martha Manning's story, the psychologist.
A really powerful example. Initially, she kind of glossed over her own ECT in her writing, but then she decided, damn it, I didn't rob a bank. I have nothing to be ashamed of.
Good for her.
She started telling people directly, challenging the perception, saying, I didn't let them do it to me. I asked them to do it. But she faced backlash, uncomfortable silences, outrage, even protests requiring security at one of her talks.
Wow, protests. Just for talking about her own medical treatment.
Yeah. It shows how deep the stigma runs. But on the positive side, the source notes that celebrities going public has really helped demystify the treatment and stoke its rebound.
Like who?
Examples mentioned include Dick Cavett calling it a magic wand. Patty Duke found it quickly reversed her depression and mania. Vladimir Horowitz had a positive experience. Roland Koloff, the musician, called it a roto-rooter for his mind. Dr. Leon Rosenberg described it as life-saving, and something that ought not to be a whispered approach.
Having those well-known names attached must make a difference.
It seems to help reduce the fear and mystery around it.
Okay, so let's bring it back to Kitty Dukakis. After weighing everything she's experienced, the good and the bad, what's her conclusion?
Her conclusion, shared in the source, is that while memory loss is definitely a major side effect, and she really hates losing control over parts of her past, for her, it is the only side effect she experienced, and is less of a problem now than it was right after treatment.
So manageable in her case.
And crucially, for her, the control ECT gives her over her disabling depression is worth this relatively minor cost. She calls it a quid pro quo.
A trade-off she's willing to make.
Yeah. She also notes that it's easier to accept the losses because she was warned about them, and that most memories, thankfully, do return eventually.
And the source leaves us with that simple but really profound question her counselor Corky asked her, right?
Exactly. Would I rather be depressed or be forgetful?
Puts it pretty starkly.
We've journeyed through a lot here. The grim history and public fear surrounding ECT, the surprising realities of modern treatment so far removed from the stereotypes.
Yeah.
Who is getting this treatment today, often the most severely ill, but with those troubling disparities in who can actually access quality care?
Right, the access issue is huge.
The reasons behind its quiet comeback, despite all the challenges, the global variations in practice, some quite shocking.
Definitely.
The very real and feared side effect of memory loss, and that ongoing struggle against stigma.
It's clear this is a treatment with a really complex past and present. It carries so much historical baggage, faces real challenges with access and quality control, and includes this significant side effect that genuinely causes distress.
No question.
Yet for many patients, it's clearly not an exaggeration when they say they feel it has literally saved their lives when nothing else could.
It really does force you to consider the difficult trade-offs involved when you're facing severe mental illness. What are you willing to risk for a chance at relief?
Right. Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. Given the profound suffering of severe depression and other illnesses, and the documented effectiveness of ECT where other treatments often fail, how should we, as a society, and within the medical community itself, really balance the very real risks and side effects, like memory loss, against the chance of giving someone their life back from that abyss?